Just 1 second. And I'm gonna go ahead and do roll call. I'm gonna go with Sam Schoenberg, present. Jenny Schaefer,
Present.
and I am Mauricio Garcia, are present. Am present? Am present. Okay, we'll go with I am present. Okay, well, so we're gonna go ahead and get into our slideshow. Today we are covering just some updates from us as usual. We're going to spend the first 20 minutes or so giving our updates. And then we're really excited to welcome the Office of Inspector General and Inspector General herself, Deborah Witzberg, here to give us some insights on the data dashboards that are available on their website and also additional resources that we can use for the 19th district. Last month, we had a really successful Q&A session where we incorporated into our public comments. So we're going to do that again this month. So if you would like to make a public comment, please see Elise in the green sweater in the back, fill out a little comment card, and then we will call you up at the end. Everybody gets 2 minutes to speak, and then we will conduct a Q&A and take down your comments per usual. And then we have a couple of surveys at the end of this meeting that we're really excited for everybody to fill out here in person, so don't leave. And then, yeah, we'll go from there. So we'll go ahead and get started with our updates. As usual, I want to provide a snapshot of the violence reduction dashboard that's available to us all. As we all know, there's been increased robberies and burglarizations in the 19th districts. You can see those two numbers in red. We're up 33% against this time last year for aggravated battery, and then we're also up almost 5% for robbery victimizations. As I've mentioned before, and I have confirmed this with Commander Dasani, we are having a very specific unit, the robbery, carjacking, burglary missions team out surveying the hotspots in Lincoln Square, North Center, additionally the Wilson and Broadway area again, because there have been some more robberies there, but just know that there is a specific team dedicated to these robberies and burglarizations happening in the district. And as I've mentioned before, if anybody has any information on any robberies, carjackings, burglaries, any information, videos that you'd like to submit, you can submit it to a CPD email, which is 019rbtinfo@chicagopolice.org. As I've mentioned before, you might not receive a reply, but they very much do appreciate anybody submitting witness testimonies or any information that you have.
The next update is around the migrant situation. Before we get into this, I just want to take a moment to remember the 5-year-old boy who just died in the civilian shelter. So we take a moment of silence. It is clearly very sad what is happening to many of these people who are coming to our city. They are facing deplorable conditions, and so we really need to make sure that we are doing all that we can to support that this does not continue to happen, and that people who come to our city feel welcome and are able to thrive and be successful here in Chicago. And news at our shelter, at our police station, we have cleared all the migrants that have been staying in the 19th district from actually all police stations, and they're all now in local shelters or churches or looking for their own housing. Other news around the migrant situation is that now we have a landing zone in Chicago where the buses are supposed to drive and drop off the migrants. Now buses are no longer following those rules always and kind of dropping people off anywhere they want, which creates some more chaos and disorganization, and that is coming directly from the governor of Texas, not obeying by the Chicago rules of our landing zone. The mutual aid team, even though our work has changed, we are looking at what we can continue to do, because we had a really robust, strong team, and we want to continue to be able to support the migrants, because clearly there are still quite a bit of needs that we need to address. The QR code there will take you to our website. One of the things that we are doing is making welcome kits for people who do come to the landing zone, so that we can get them some basic clothing, jackets, hats, things like that for when they arrive to the city. We're also looking at ways to think about housing, because that's going to be the next major hurdle that people will have to face, is how they can find sustainable housing without jobs most of the time. And speaking of without jobs, the last thing that we're asking people to do is just continue to advocate for housing, make sure that all migrants have a way to expedite work permits so that they can get jobs and thrive here in our city. And also just continue to ask for more federal funding because it is definitely needed. Also, you may have heard, hopefully, from our newsletters and many other ways that we're trying to get the word out, that we have been working hard to advocate for a workforce allocation study to be completed. It's a workforce allocation study, just as a quick overview, is a really in-depth data-driven look at what our sworn officers as well as civilian positions are in the CPD. And this has kind of been something that people from all different people, city leaders, have been behind this type of workforce allocation study being completed. We are excited because Alderman Martin, who's here today, has proposed an ordinance that he's introduced to City Council earlier in the week, or last week. And it's around the data-driven and inclusive staffing requirements that are mandated by the consent decree. Sorry, I don't know. The consent decree ensures has a certain number of paragraphs that outline a specific staffing requirements that we have got to meet. And so one of the things that this will do in Alderman Martin's ordinance is really ensure that we are working towards those requirements. Another thing that we're excited about the ordinance is that it introduces a timeline for completion. We've been talking about this workforce allocation study for many, many, many years. It's time to start actually moving on it. Another thing that's exciting about the workforce allocation study proposal is that it ensures for an open and transparent process by making sure we get quarterly updates of how that the study is going, as well as in the end releasing a final report to the public, as well as other important city leaders. And that's really important because there have been staffing allocation studies done in the past that have not been released. So this will ensure that we can just see it and know what is needed to be done. And another thing that we are excited about for the proposal is that it's an ongoing thing. It's not just saying let's do it once and then be done. We're going to continue to look at it every year and make sure that our staffing levels are where they need to be across the district. So then we wanted to fill you in on the steps in order to get this passed. It was just introduced last week. There will be a vote in early January for the Committee on Police and Fire, where if they vote in favor of moving the proposal forward, it'll go to City Council in January, hopefully. And if it gets over 50%, it will be put into a city ordinance. So now here's how you can help. We have been working hard to get people to sign on to a letter that we created around advocacy towards this issue. There should have been a letter on the back table or the front table when you guys walked in. There's also a QR code that you can scan. We started sending this out last week, and we already have 135 signatures. So that's exciting, and we hope that more people will sign on as they read the letter and understand the need for a well-done workforce allocation study in Chicago.
The next update we wanted to share, which if you've been following the news or our email list, you might have heard about this already, but wanted to just let you know what the current status of it is, which is the contract between the Fraternal Order of Police, the largest police union, and the City of Chicago. Last week, that contract was set for a bifurcated vote before the City Council. One piece of it was for pay raises and other work style issues. Another piece was related to how the most serious cases of police disciplinary allegations are handled in the City of Chicago. And on that piece, we had a lot to say, and I think we had a good result this week. The brief background of this is that for 60 years, the most serious cases of police misconduct, these are ones that would either result in the termination of an officer if sustained, or the suspension of 1 year or more, would be heard by the police board, a public body that right now is nominated by the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability. Over the summer, there was a ruling that would have forced the contract to include a provision that would allow officers facing that most serious form of punishment to opt for private arbitration, which is done behind closed doors, rather than having their cases heard before this public body, the police board. We advocated back over the summer to reject this proposal. We joined with more than 40 other district council members from throughout Chicago to ask the city council to reject this. This week it did come up for a vote, and we are pleased to report that 33 of the 50 council members rejected this part of the police contract. That includes all 6 alder people who represent this district, including Alderman Barton, who's here with us today. And we're glad to see that that vote took place and resulted as it did. The next steps, though, show that this is not a done issue. That part of the contract was rejected. It will now go back to the negotiating table and potentially back to the same arbitrator who ruled that this had to be added to the contract to begin with. If it does go back to that arbitrator, he's indicated that he will have the same position again, so it may come back before the city council, and we'll be doing all that we can to, if that does happen, advocate that the city council, and particularly the alder people who represent the 19th police district, stand with the vote that they took the first time. There is a chance, if it's rejected again by the city council, it would go to court. From my perspective, this is an important issue for maintaining trust and accountability within our police department. The city council shouldn't rubber stamp a move that would make these very small number of cases, but some of the most damaging to public trust in the police, to be heard behind closed doors without public accountability and transparency. So we'll be continuing to monitor this issue. There have been a few other arguments raised as this debate has gone on that I think might just be worth highlighting quickly. One is that from the president of the Fraternal Order of Police and the FOP in general has argued, well, we're a police union and every other police union gets these kinds of arbitrations if we're facing discipline. One counter I would add to that is that police swear an oath to the public and to the Constitution. They are and should be held to a higher standard, particularly when it comes to these most serious cases of alleged misconduct. It's also worth recognizing that the vast majority of police disciplinary cases already go to arbitration. These are any discipline that could be a year or less than a year of suspension. We're talking about probably a dozen, 20 cases a year that would go in front of the police board. But again, these are the most high profile ones and the ones that have the most serious consequences. So those are just some of the points I wanted to raise there. We'll continue monitoring this and report back.
We are excited that tonight we have with us the Office of the Inspector General, and including the Inspector General herself. Thank you for being here. Just as a quick update overview of what the Inspector General does. They're an oversight body, and they conduct independent and objective analysis of government departments. It's a really important part to make sure that we're holding all of government responsible. Every year they list projects that they are wanting to look into for the next coming year. Right now, they have their new projects listed up here on the 2024 for the 2024 year. So if you guys have any input, we'd love to hear it from you, and I'm sure we'll get some more information about what that will be like as well. But please provide your input.
Speaking of 2024 planning, this past weekend on Saturday, we gathered with district council members across the city. So per the ordinance that created our position, we are required, but happy to attend an annual meeting in which we prioritize goals for the upcoming year. So this is a great group shot of us. There's about 45 of us there on Saturday, and it was a 2-hour session. And we worked to establish what our top 5 priorities were going to be for the 2024 year, which are: we want to work with Superintendent Snelling to establish basic standards for communications and meetings between district command staff and the district councils, and ensure that the superintendent enforces those standards. We've heard a lot from community members that we want to have a more open line of communication, not just a one-way communication, but 2 ways, so where we can go back and forth and communicate with CPD leadership in our district specifically. So we want to see that happen. We're really excited to have this as number 1 in terms of our priorities. Number 2 is we want to set a goal for Superintendent Snelling to reduce 911 response times in an equitable manner. I think we can all appreciate that we can do better in terms of response times, but we also want to see that it's done in an equitable manner, because some parts of the city face much larger response times than other parts of the city. So we want to make sure that that is balanced and equitable across the city. Number 3 is direct CCPSA staff. So that is the CCPSA is the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability, which we sit under in that department. We want the staff to develop a public relations and education campaign with support from district councils that highlights their role in public safety and police accountability. One of the biggest things that we found out when we were campaigning last year is when we knock on people's doors and ask if they have ever heard of district council, 95% of people said no. They're not heard of us. That number is growing. Obviously, it's been about 7 months since we were inaugurated, but we want to keep that momentum going. We want to make sure that people exist, that this resource is available to you, because ultimately we are your ambassadors and we want to form a collective voice for our community's needs. Number 4 is focus the commission's attention and resources on its responsibility to help to bring the city into compliance with the consent decree as soon as it is practicable, per the section of the Chicago Municipal Code. Thing that speaks for itself. We've spoken many times at length about the consent decree, and we want to see more movement happen much more quickly and as soon as possible. And then 5th, you'll hear us say it again, but we want to set a goal for Superintendent Snelling to follow through on and implement its plans for a workforce allocation study that engages the commission and district councils. If one is to be conducted, we want to be key stakeholders because, again, we are ambassadors to you and to your needs, and we want to make sure that we communicate those clearly and consistently and persistently towards the CPD leadership.
So the goals that Marilia just outlined are the ones that district councilors from throughout the city came together to set for the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability. And just as a reminder, that commission is a 7-member body comprised of people from throughout Chicago. There's requirements that some be from the north side, some from the south side, some from the west, and have different experiences under their belt related to policing and police accountability. It's a very important body that's as new as we are. The current 7-member commission is there on an interim basis, and were appointed by the last mayor. But going forward, those who sit on that commission get their jobs by being nominated by a committee of district council members. That's where they sort of have a connection to the people. And I serve on the nominating committee from the 19th Police District. And I just wanted to update you that we're going to have a busy season of nominations coming up in the new year. The nominating committee has been meeting for months since we took office to establish our own protocols, to come up with a rubric and an application for evaluating candidates, for coming up with interview questions about the values of transparency, accountability, community ties, capacity, competence, and some other items. And the application for these commission members will open on January 8th, 2024. So 1 week into the year, the applications will open and will be available on the CCPSA website. Those applications will be open for 30 days, and anyone in Chicago who meets the eligibility requirements can apply. And then the nominating committee, which is me and 21 other district council members from the 22 police districts in Chicago, will interview at least 28 of those candidates over a couple of pretty long weekends, and then meet to nominate at least 14 people to the mayor. The mayor will then choose 7 to send to the city council for ratification. So it's going to be a busy season. This is the first of many announcements you'll hopefully hear from me and others about the fact that these applications are open. I'm very excited about this next step in the CCPSA history. And the next slide. We just sent out a press release and some information today that sort of alerts the public that this application process is coming. If you're interested in checking out the qualifications to be a community commissioner, if you're interested, if you know someone who might be interested and qualified, there's a QR code there that has the qualifications and more information about the application process, and we'll be sure to keep you updated as that process goes forward.
And the last thing we always like to remind everyone is that we are here to talk to people in the community. We love to go out and have one-on-one conversations with you. We like to learn about different things that are happening, different organizations that operate in the 19th district. So please always feel free to reach out and set up a meeting with us. And one really exciting thing that the 3 of us, I think we are the first district councilors in the city to be able to do this. Mine is tomorrow. William and Stan went earlier in the month. We get to do ride-alongs with the police, so we can really understand what their days look like and what it is to be a police in Chicago in the 19th district. We are going to share more information about that at our next meeting. But again, These are our website, which you can get lots of information about our meetings. We'll always present or put our presentation up on the website. And also please feel free to reach out to us at the 19th District Council at gmail.com.
And I just wanted to recognize that we've got a few elected officials or offices with us. We mentioned Alderman Martin, thank you for being here. We're also joined by representatives from Senator Sarah Feigenholz's office and Representative Ann Williams' office. And of course, we'll hear from the Office of the Inspector General later this evening. Are there any other elected offices or city offices that I haven't mentioned yet? Okay, no, but just wanted to make sure, and thank you for being here. We really appreciate the engagement.
Okay, before we get into our main speakers tonight, we did want to give the floor to Alderman Matt Martins. I think he wants to give a few words.
Sure. Just careful because it's very tricky situation up here.
I'll do my best. Good evening, everybody. I'm Matt Martin from the 47th Ward. Grateful to be here with all of you this evening. So I wanted to share a bit of an introduction as to why we're here and why we're focused on what we're focused on this evening. I am the chair of the Ethics and Government Oversight Committee on the Chicago City Council. And one of the aspects of my committee's jurisdiction is to hold meetings about the work that our Inspector General's office is doing. And we've done just that on issues ranging from recycling and composting to issues around public safety. I think it's really important that our office shine a spotlight on the great work that their office is doing. But we also know that it's not always the most convenient thing for people to come down to City Council and hear about this, even though our meetings are recorded. This sort of in-person engagement is really important as well. And so my committee has been working with the 19th Police District to make sure that we can get that office to come out as soon as possible to talk about their important work. And in addition to the great reports that they're putting out, one of the things that we'll be shining a spotlight on momentarily is around their terrific set of public safety dashboards. I know that's something that I consult pretty much on a weekly basis, especially as it pertains to staffing levels in various subdivisions within the police department, including the 19th Police District, Area 3 detectives. And so I'm really grateful that the 19th District has been so collaborative in helping bring them to you here this evening to talk about their important work. And so I guess without further ado, we have Inspector General Devin Witzberg and Deputy Inspector General for Public Safety, Tabara Richardson, who will walk you through the great work that their office is doing, especially with DESPA. Can I carry this over, Dan?
Yes.
Or are you gonna?
No, good evening. Thank you for having us. My name is Deborah Witzberg. I'm Inspector General for the City of Chicago. And I am here with Tabara Richardson, who is our Deputy Inspector General for Public Safety. And I'm mostly going to get out of the way here and turn this over to Tabara, but I just wanted to introduce myself. Thank you for having us, Chairman Martin. I very much appreciate your partnership and the work of your committee. Tabara is gonna talk a bit about the work of our public safety section and our dashboards, and then we'll both be here, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has about any of what we discuss here tonight, other work of the office, other issues facing the city and police accountability and reform, some of which have already been touched on here. So I'm happy to answer any questions. And Tabara, maybe I'll jump in when you get to the staffing dashboard and talk a little bit about the staffing now. But otherwise, I will turn it over to Tabara.
Click here, just hit the next button. Should be. There we go.
Yeah.
You wanted to proceed or?
No, I'll stand up and then go to the dashboard.
Sounds good.
Hello.
Hello.
This is like
One big journey.
Hi, everybody. Again, I am Tabara Richardson. I serve as a Deputy Inspector General for Public Safety. Thanks for having me. So before we get to the dashboards, just so you all have a better framework for how we get to the dashboards, we get there because this is under the Office of Inspector General. And because of the nature, right, shining light in dark rooms, bringing transparency, like that is how we ultimately get to the dashboards. And so I'm not going to jump straight to the dashboards, but I'm going to take you a bit, not too far deep. I could talk about it forever, but just a little bit into the Office of Inspector General, the public safety section, and then we will get to what you all are here for, the dashboards.
A little bit about the Office of Inspector General. The Office of Inspector General is an independent, nonpartisan oversight agency with the mission to promote effectiveness, economy, and integrity in order to expose corruption, waste, and mismanagement in city government. There was a third E that. Thank you. And that's how she said. And so essentially, what does that mean? We'll keep going. It means that the office, and what I will say is, I typically present with a different PowerPoint, so you all can look at the slides, but I'm not about to rely on it. I'm just going to be talking to you all. So our jurisdiction is like really anybody that's connected with the city. So that includes appointed officials, elected officials, lobbyists, contractors, vendors. So we have jurisdiction over, we're independent from the city with jurisdiction over the city. And in order to achieve the mission, we conduct audits, we conduct programmatic reviews and evaluations and investigations. And I'll just speak briefly about that. So most of the investigations into CPD specifically are going to be handled by the Bureau of Internal Affairs within CPD or the Civilian Office of Police Accountability. But in some circumstances, say for example, if there's a conflict of interest, then our investigators will handle that investigation. But otherwise, a lot of the investigations that we conduct are into other city officials. How are we independent? We are independent structurally, where the Inspector General is appointed, has a term, and in fact is a staggered term, so it's not at the exact same time. It's a 2-year difference with the mayor. The Inspector General can only be removed for cause. We are independent as far as the budget is concerned, with a floor of 0.14%, approximately, or at least last year, approximately 11 million. So that means that we can't be starved out, right? We're conducting investigations, or we're looking into issues that, you know, if you're doing your job right, everybody is not going to like you. But you know, we're focused up with us. So we are independent in those ways, and we're also independent in the fact that the work that we do is at our discretion. People can't tell us what to do or not to do, so that's how we maintain our independence in those number of ways. We have multiple sections. We have our audit and program review. They conduct audits or programmatic evaluations into all areas of city government outside of public safety. The public safety section conducts oversight work over the Chicago Police Department and the Police Accountability Agency. So that includes CIA, COPA, and we have a legal section. We have technological section, and of course we have a section that conducts investigations. So specifically, since I am the Deputy Inspector General for Public Safety, I'm going to, and that's how we get to tonight, we're going to talk about the public safety dashboards, talk a bit about the public safety section, and then we will roll into the dashboards. So the public safety section, if we go back to 2014, we have a shooting with Ron McDonald by a CPD member. Fast forward to November 2015, we have the release of the video under then Mayor Ron Emanuel. We have the Police Accountability Task Force, and including the Department of Justice report is issued with the suggestion to form a public safety section within the Office of Inspector General. So what does that mean? That there would be a section within the Office of Inspector General with dedicated resources specifically for accountability and oversight work as it pertains to CPD and the police accountability agencies. We do the work in a number of ways. It is outlined in the ordinance which established the public safety section, but I'm going to go into specifically how we do our work. So we have myself, the Deputy Inspector General for Public Safety. From our legal team, we have an Associate General Counsel, and then we have a Chief Operations Officer. So we have 5 associate general counsel We have a performance analysis section and an investigative analysis section. So you just said a bunch of words, and what exactly did you say? What does that mean? So this is what it means. Our investigative analysis unit, they look at most of the closed disciplinary cases conducted by COPA and BIA. And so they're not looking at the investigation to say like, oh, we would have done this differently. We're not Monday morning quarterbacking. But what we are saying, we're looking at them to see whether there are any deficiencies that materially affect the outcome. If that happens, we have a number of tools at hand, but one of the most common tools that we use are sending recommendations to reopen when we were saying, hey, go back and look at this again. And then what you all may be more familiar with is the work conducted by the Performance Analysis Unit. And I'll talk briefly about some of the reports, but that's where we conduct our programmatic evaluations into CPD operations, discipline and accountability, and constitutional policing as broad priorities. So an example of some recent reports will include when we looked at CPD's rule against false reports, either written or oral. We looked at CPD's enforcement against what required reporting of misconduct, which may be of interest to you all, since I heard you all mention 911 response time. We conducted an inquiry into CPD's 911 response time. Now, unfortunately, we could not find or evaluate what we actually set out to evaluate. The issue with that was that 49% of instances where CPD goes out, they actually don't record the time when they arrive on the scene. So it makes that hard to analyze something when you're missing 49% of the information. But that's also one of our reports, 911 response time. So we have lots of reports, lots of evaluations, and I can talk to you about any of these, or Secretary General Whitesburg can, but I will keep moving so that we can get to why you all came out tonight. So this is where I'm going to switch seats.
Right, yeah.
In real time, I'm about to go through the dashboards. Now, I will tell you, most of the time, this is me going through myself if I have a question or I'm playing with it. And so that's what I would recommend for you all to do, is just go on the website, explore the dashboards, see what information is there, what you can figure out. Look over time, it's consistently updated. And I'll give you an example for a question that came up recently, and then how I could just go to the dashboard and try to figure it out. So this comes from the idea of transparency, right? Those who work for the people should be accountable to the people. Information that is available should be available to everyone. And the nice thing is, because some people say like, oh, well, I went on CPD's website and they posted this, and then like maybe there are slight differences between what you may find on our website and what you may find on CPD's website. But because we have, and that's where we go back to why did I talk about the OIG, because we have access to the entire city. We not only gather information from CPD, but then we're also, say, for example, able to gather information from the Department of Human Resources. And so then when we clean the data, we can say like, okay, well, CPD has this, but then also the city agency has this in order to produce the most accurate results. So if you go to igchicago.org, it will bring you to this page. Or no, it will not bring you to this page. So I'm going to open a new tab, and let's see. And I want to take you step by step, so it's sort of populating, but I'm going to just take you, if you went to the landing page for the OIG. So this is where you will start. And then you'll see where it says information portal, and you can click on information portal, or you can click on the drop down arrow, and we're going to go to the public safety dashboards. Now, for the sake of time, I know that the agenda said a deep dive, but there's only so deep that we can go within the time limits. So first we'll just start off where you can see that there are a number of dashboards. So we have 911 calls, CPD arrests, complaints and notifications. So that is like when officers, complaints and notifications against officers, investigatory stop reports, just like it sounds, the reports that officers have to complete when they stop individuals, similar to that, but with the use of force component, our tactical response reports, sworn CPD members, which will relate to what Inspector General Whisper will talk more about, and CFD emergency events. So I'm not going to go into all of them. My goal will be to go into 3 to give you all an idea for some ways that you can explore the different dashboards. And then I think it would be more beneficial if it's a bit interactive. So say, for example, if you have a question, oh, can we figure this out? Hopefully I will know the answer, or we can figure it out together. Or if it's, well, what does this mean? Like any questions as it pertains to your ability to go and use the dashboards later, like feel free to ask those questions as we go along. So we will just start with 911 calls. So even though it's right there, but just for the sake of demonstration, if you click on whichever dashboard, it will take you to that dashboard. We're going to start by looking at 911 calls by geography. So we're going to look at the map. And then what is really nice is if you're unsure about whether, to the extent, I think that all of these are worth your time, but if you want to know, like, am I going to be able to possibly find this answer that I'm looking for? There's a section on what you will find here to give you ideas, or if you're just exploring and you want to know, oh, what types of things can I look for? So that section is really good. Some questions the data set can answer. And then if you have questions as far as like, well, how accurate or how recent is this? You see that the dashboard is updated daily. So we'll keep going. So at the top, you will see that the district with the highest rate of calls is District 11. And then, so you'll be able to look at the data in 2 ways. You'll be able to look at the data just based purely off of numbers. What are the numbers? And then you will be able to look at the data based off of population. So how do those numbers compare per 100,000 people? So comparing by population. So those are the 2 ways you can look at the data. So here, if we just look at the map itself, we'll see that, again, as we saw up top, District 11, Harrison, and District 8, Chicago are the 2 areas, the darker areas, they have the most calls. Now, for your interest, what we will do is we will look specifically at District 19. And so what you'll see up top where it says total population by race and ethnicity. So the top numbers are going to be for the entire city of Chicago. And then what you will see below for District 19, well, that's the population, based off of the specific district. And what you can do is go down. So let's go down to District 19. So if I didn't click on District 19, what you would have seen is by each district, the calls. Again, first column is total calls. Second column is calls per 100,000 people, like by population. And then the last column is going to be the total population for the city of Chicago. But let's go down to District 19. Okay, so we'll see first column here. This is the total number of calls. And then the second column is how that compares, right? Based off of the population. And then the last column is the total population. So I believe it's starting from January 2020 to the present. Right, so you can adjust the time frame, and then, so let's play around a little bit more. Say, for example, if we want to look, so one, you'll see that you can adjust this. We're going to go through all of these examples based off of the District 19. However, you could adjust it. The options it gives you are based on the beat, ward, 47, or the community area. And then you can adjust the time frame and we'll play around. So if we look at priority level, so I'm going to uncheck all and we're going to go through, let's go through priority level 1 and I hit apply. Okay. Oh, okay, it did, and the color is different too. So that's how we also know that it changed. But again, let's go down and we'll see. Again, first column, total number of calls per population, and total population. You can also. Okay. Okay, so this is actually great. This is my first time using. So this actually will let you know where each of these features are, how you can make adjustments, what information you will gain by making these adjustments. So when you're at home, you're just like, yep, she did a bunch of talking. I know there were interesting things, but what exactly she said, then you won't need me. The question mark is here. But I'm going to close the user guide. And I just want to show you one other nice feature. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to put all priority levels, and we could also look at call types. So say if we want to look at, I'm going to uncheck all and say we want to look at burglaries. So I can start typing in. Yep, and there we go. And I'm just going to select all burglary types and apply. And we go down again. So I see total 1,062, how it compares per capita and how it compares per population. But what I really wanted to get to, which is a newer feature. So let's say, probably can just hit cancel. I don't know if that really works. I want to go back to yeah, so apply. And this last feature, behavioral health related. So we do understand, right, that we're moving into a new era of public safety, where calls may or may not, there may be varying needs for responses. But if we want to look specifically at behavioral related, health related responses, again, if I change the district, so right now I'm still in District 19, so I can look at it for the entire city of Chicago, but I'm going to stick with District 19. So that last column, I clicked on yes, and we see that it actually turned red, right? So there are higher number of calls for behavioral related issues, and then I can see the actual number here. And then based on population, yes.
So there's no distinction in that behavioral health call category. Anything goes there. It would be behavioral health related.
So for the map, the answer is yes, but, and hopefully I don't prove myself wrong. If we switch, so right now we're looking based on geography. Let's go to this other tab here. So you only have 2 options, so you're not gonna, but if we go to, so this is showing you based on priority levels, right? And I'm going to go to, right now, we're at all, I'm going to switch to District 19. Just click on that, apply. So initially we start off with all of Chicago. Now we've moved to District 19. We can see the pattern based over time. If we had stuck with the entire city, you will see those rises as expected in the summer. Similarly, we see rises here in District 19. But what I'm going to do is, where it says time frame kept the same. For all calls, I'm going to change it to behavioral health related. And this should give us the results that I am looking for. So I'm in District 19, I filtered by that, I filtered by mental health disturbance. And when I go down, I can see the types of calls that they were related to. So if I scroll through this list, so for example, 475 were related to assaults, and I'm just looking at the priority level 1 right now.
Which is to say that a call for any incident type can be designated in the data. That's what you're seeing here is calls across incident type and priority area, any of which have been designated as behavioral health related.
Over 2,000 checks for well-being, so you can break it down based off of.
You said for 911 calls, only 50% of the data was actually present for behavioral studies like this. How much of the actual occurrences is captured by your dashboard?
So that 49% only refers to on-scene arrival time. So unfortunately, the stats decrease as we get closer to arriving on scene. But this data, so when we start off and we call 911, it's going through OEMC. That data is captured. So the type of call, how it's categorized, what categories put in, like all of that data is actually.
So there is no underreporting. Most of them?
The calls are all accounted for. The quality of the accuracy of the designations is that's a human process, but all of the calls are accounted for here for which police service is dispatched.
Is there a standardized way that OAMC knows to mark something as a behavioral health related call? Is there a standard protocol for that?
And I don't know the answer.
There's training associated with that, and there are certain kinds of calls which are coded that way. There's a designation in the data to add a Z to the end of the code in the data. So yes, in the same way that there are categories and guidelines for how priority areas are identified or how calls are classified. Those are designations made on the basis of imperfect and preliminary information that comes in when the call is received, but the short answer is yes.
And I think this speaks exactly to one of the things that we address a lot is that we have a very high volume of mental health calls in our district. As you saw, we turned bright orange. And I think this is one of the reasons why making sure that we come up with appropriate responses to mental health in the 19th district specifically is very important to our district council and something that we want to see grow and expand throughout the city. Especially when you look at if you notice the map turned blue when we looked at the number of top priority calls, like the 0 or the 1 priorities. But when we look at, so that means we had fewer number of those in our district, but when you look at it, it's a lot of mental health related calls. So ensuring that we have the proper systems set up in the 19th district is a really important. And I think this data, and this is why the Inspector General is so important, because it kind of shows the things that we've been feeling in the district.
Anything else on 911? Otherwise, I will pivot. So I will say that two of the dashboards that I like looking at all of them, but the ones my go-tos, I also like looking at the CPD arrest, and I plan to go through that, but I've been watching this clock, so I'm going to, but it's similar, look at the map, and then you can also go and look at trends, same thing, tactical response reports. But because of the topic that I know we want the Inspector General to cover, I'm going to go to CPD sworn members dashboard. So if I go back to the top, again, I can go back to information portal, I can do the drop down, or I'm just going to click here for public safety dashboards. It's going to take me back to the second page where we started, and I'm going to go to sworn CPD members. It will take me down to it. And then I'm going to start here. This is going to give us a general overview. Again, we have the same things, what you will find, questions the dashboard can answer. And so here we just see for December 2023. And again, I think this one goes back to 2017, where we can compare over time, but we'll see the population for all of CPD. So we can look at the percentage of whites, we can look at the percentage of Blacks or African Americans, we can look at the percentage of Latinos, Asian, and so forth. We see the total number of member counts, just 11,774, the number of units, average age, etc. And this is interesting because we now see a breakdown. So you can go back here to see what each color represents, but you'll see how it changes, how the age groups change and how the variations. So this is the one where I was saying, we had a meeting and the question was, as far as specifically CPD members who are Black or African American, and whether they are heavier in the age of folks who will be closer to retirement. And we can see that the blue represents Black or African American when we look at this. And so here we see that those, well, are, I guess I'll have to point us there, but how we have higher.
Bigger bars
Yep.
than at the other end of the spectrum. So that makes for this sort of moving demographic.
And so, again, you can look at similar data here. So with, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So what is the assumption that you heavier number? Why is there less? Not being safe.
Yeah. I think it's
important to say that the data here does not contain any assumptions. The purpose of the dashboards is expressly. So these dashboards are, as Tabara discussed, this is a transparency exercise. This is about rendering data about how Chicago works available to Chicagoans, right? And so this doesn't include analytical findings, it doesn't include assumptions, it doesn't include recommendations. This is an exercise in making the data available for people who may wish to carry good and clear data into their work. So what the demographic information is telling us doesn't have anything to do with recruitment, but is simply telling us that as CPD members reach a mandatory retirement age, we should expect to see Black or African American representation in the department shrink because there are more Black members retiring than there are in younger cohorts. We've done some work separately around hiring. Actually, the front end demographic problem in the department has little to do with recruiting and everything to do with the department's hiring process. And we can talk more about that in more detail. It's not actually a recruiting problem. But what the dashboards are telling us are just that sort of data forecast. And that's one of the ways we encourage people to use these dashboards is to kind of identify trend lines and identify areas of interest to you in your work and to us in ours.
And I'm going to make 2 final points and then I'm going to pass the mic. One point is just when we look at these numbers over time, so total populations, if we're looking at demographics, have remained the same. But when we look at that, right, so they're pretty steady. But when we look at how that spreads out over age, that's how you get a better understanding of like the future that we are moving towards. And then last point is if you switch to unit or title, that is also has a lot of interesting data. So for example, you see again, like the demographic breakdowns based off of districts. If we look at District 19, well, so that's the first column where we see percent of member counts. And again, like it coordinates demographic breakdown. But if you look in the second column, member count, we'll see the districts with the greatest number of members are 6th District, Gresham, 7th District, Inglewood, and 11th District, Harrison, which makes sense, right? Because when we looked at 911, the greatest number of calls, if we had looked at CPD arrests, it actually also has the greatest number of arrests. But 19th District also has 285. And then you also can see average length of service, which is interesting because the areas that have like the most number of police officers, or even if we just look at the 11th district, it has like the second to lowest average age. So we have the youngest officers, and this is just a fact. I'm not saying what it means or anything. We have the youngest number as far as average age for officers in the district with the highest number of arrests, the highest rate of crime. But so you can look at demographics, member count as far as where CPD members are, and the average age. So the average age in District 19 is, or the average number of years. I don't know. I keep saying nobody is 10 or 12. They cannot be that. Yeah. But the average number of years in CPD, 12 and a half years. So I just wanted to like point this out for you to look at this page too, and just explore the dashboard. Have fun, like figure out information or give us suggestions. Hey, I want to know this. Like, can you all help us figure that out? And I'm handing it over.
Let me jump in here. I'm actually going to switch over, I think, to the tab that shows us by district. And I'm imposing on this part of the conversation because I want to talk a little bit about the staffing analysis question and like what the data tells us and doesn't tell us. So this is one of our most viewed dashboards on the information portal, and it shows over time for a district the number of officers in the district. Now, this is helpful. It tells us some things. It doesn't tell us some other things. This number represents, so here we are in 19, this number represents the total CPD members either assigned or detailed to the 19th district. So an assignment is a long-term work location or set of duties. A detail is a short-term one. Details kind of come and go. Assignments are longer term. So this is a little bit helpful, right? In that it tells us that at the beginning of the year, the 19th district had 295 members. Going into the end of the year, we have 285. That's useful, but it's a long way short of the whole story because it does not include lots of other information. It doesn't include people from other CPD functions who might be working in the geographic bounds of the 19th district. It doesn't tell us anything about who is on leave during this period of time, what the actual person power is on the street. And from a functional kind of quality of life perspective, that's actually what people want to know, right? It's like how many police are working in my neighborhood. That's what people living in the neighborhood want to know. It's what the department command staff wants to know. At the beginning of a shift, how many people are available to staff the cars, to staff the beats? And that question of how many people are actually available to work isn't captured in the department's assignment and detailed data. And so a couple things just to be said about that. One is that we are working and we will launch soon a version of this dashboard which draws on data from other city departments and other data sources to offer a more complete picture. So we'll be able to offer a dashboard that does reflect things like people who are on leave or injured and on the medical roll or on furlough, people who are working on other CPD teams. So for example, right, the detective areas, which are kind of include the 19th district in their territory, not reflected here. So we'll be able to provide a little more information about that. It will still be imperfect, although it will be a greatly more accurate view of who's actually working. So I say all of that on my way to just a little bit of commentary on the staffing analysis question, which is that there are really two staffing questions to be answered here. One has to do with how we get an as accurate as possible picture of what person power actually looks like in the police department at any given time, right? This doesn't tell us anything about times of day. It doesn't tell us anything about watches. It's not broken down by the beat level. So that's the first question. How do we get an accurate, detailed, nuanced count of how many people are available working the street? That's question one. Question two is, what model do we use to make sensible staffing allocation decisions going forward? And I think it's just important to sort of think about this as two separate questions. They're obviously related, but we need to be able to do both of these things. One, we need to know how many people are working or available to work. And two, we need to have a system in place so that we can allocate a finite number of CPD members in a sensible and thoughtful and policy-driven way. We can't make staffing decisions by the squeaky wheel approach, right? We can't have a city in which CPD members are allocated to the alder who complains the loudest for them, right? We can't, that's not a sensible allocation of resources. And I think the need for a staffing analysis really reaches both of these points. We need to know how many people are available. We need to know how we make decisions about allocating finite resources. That's against the backdrop of the staffing conversation. There's a nationwide staffing conversation going on now in law enforcement. This conversation is by no means unique to Chicago. There are 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States. The pool of people working in law enforcement is shrinking nationwide. This is a shrinking pool. And so neither CPD nor any other of those 18,000 departments are going to hire their way bigger than they have been. Separate from the question of whether that's a solution to any of the problems that we're facing, that's not where we're going. There is on a national scale, a shrinking pool of finite resources here. That, in my mind, underscores the importance of making allocation decisions, right? CPD staff power is just like all other resources in city government. It's a finite universe. And so where more is neither necessarily better nor necessarily available, how we allocate finite resources is really the conversation we need to be having. And I think, one other thing I will say about this, and I'll spare you from the rest of my thoughts and feelings about it, is that, we talked a little bit about behavioral health response and how important that is in the 19th district. If we're going to get to kind of the next place in terms of how we keep people safe in Chicago, one of the things we're going to have to do, from my perspective, is to right size the footprint of policing. We're going to have to determine which public safety functions belong to the police department and which belong elsewhere. Including with, for example, behavioral health professionals. Once we make those decisions about kind of allocating functions, then we need to be able to identify with those functions that we've put inside the footprint of the police department. We need to be able to measure how many people we need to perform those functions successfully and how to allocate them across the department, right? That's what we need a flexible, data-driven staffing model to do on a prospective basis, in addition to this question about how many people are available at the beginning of the midnight watch tonight to keep your neighborhood safe. So thank you for indulging us to talk on staffing now. Should we answer questions?
Yes, we can answer questions.
Yes. Oh, feedback on our project plans. Let me just very brief infomercial. So we've mentioned this quickly as far as feedback is concerned. Talking about prioritization of finite resources. We're never going to do all of the work in government oversight that needs doing. And so all of the decisions we make about the work we pursue, all of those are prioritization decisions. There's an opportunity cost to everything we do. And so in order to make the most of our oversight resources, we try very hard to make well-informed decisions about which projects we pursue, which things matter most to Chicagoans, and where we should be directing our efforts to most effectively get at mistrust and distrust in city government. And so in that spirit, we have put together 2 documents looking forward to 2024, one for our audit and review section, the other for our public safety section, outlining potential projects, things that we might look at in the coming year. And we put up drafts of these documents for public comment in the hopes that you will take a look at them and share with us what you think. Whether you think we've identified priorities that resonate with you and are real concerns for you, whether you think we're missing some things altogether, whether you think we're kind of like approaching some of these from the wrong angle, etc. So you may have seen this on some of our materials. Nobody knows Chicago like Chicagoans, right? So we're very anxious to hear from you about what you're most concerned about and what we should be most concerned about. So with that, yeah. It is. You can't miss it if you go to our website. So you can follow this QR code, but also if you go to that main website, igchicago.org, we've pretty effectively put that in your face, the feedback opportunity for 2024 projects. I should also say that's not a speak now or forever hold your peace opportunity. We're collecting feedback through the end of the month for purposes of publishing the 2024 plans, but those are living documents. They don't bind our work. And so things happen in the world and we are and ought to be responsive to things that change and to new concerns that arise and shift in priority and so on. So please do this before the end of December. We'd be very grateful for your feedback, but also know that at any other time of the year, we're also very anxious to talk to you or to hear from you, more importantly, about things that you're worried about. I often say in our office that we will go anywhere we're invited and some places we're not, to talk about our work, but much more importantly, to listen to the things we should listen to you all talk about the things we should be working on. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of community questioning about who should be handling behavioral health calls in that community versus should it be CPD or should it be folks who are trained to do community behavioral health services. So let's say we put that feedback in there. Do you have any power to then collectively move that information to the people who are gonna make the decision about whether or not we're gonna keep funding Chicago Care program within the CPP versus turning it over to the experts for behavioral health issues, also as resources?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we do in these projects that we have proposed here and where we're soliciting feedback is that we would do, if we took up this topic, for example, we would do an evaluative inquiry. We would look at how that money is being spent within CPD, how, if at all, we are equipping that program to succeed, and whether there are other practices which might work better, which might serve the purpose better. This is an area I will say where we are very well served by having oversight jurisdiction over all city programs and departments. Because if there's a question here about whether, for example, a city program belongs within the Chicago Police Department or the Chicago Department of Public Health or anywhere else, all of those things come under our jurisdictional umbrella. Umbrella is like the least kind of looming overlord metaphor that I've come up for it so far. So that's exactly what we would look at. And then we would make those recommendations in a public facing way. The city departments are required by law to respond to those recommendations. And then we publish the whole thing. We publish our findings, our recommendations, and the responses. And that's the exercise, is to sort of shove these public policy conversations out into the light of day, where everybody is having these conversations out loud. I don't know if you want to moderate questions.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Yeah, we're gonna take about 2 or 3 more questions. I think I only saw 2 hands go up. And a reminder, if you want to make a public comment, a formal public comment, see Elise for a comment slip. But John, I think I saw your hand go first. So
The Inspector General, are they always published? Are they always published?
Our program and policy reports, yes. So OIG does its work in 3 channels. Tabara talked about the various sections within our office. We work in 3 channels. We do confidential misconduct investigations. Those are confidential by law. They're administrative and criminal investigations into wrongdoing by city actors. Those are confidential. We do program and policy work. That's the public policy conversation in the light of day work that we've been talking about. All of those are public facing and published, available on our website. We can talk about those in great detail. And then the 3rd channel of our work is our data transparency work, which we've looked at here today. That is this sort of transparency for transparency's sake work. So the answer is yes, all of our policy work is public facing. Our disciplinary investigations are confidential.
That's the disciplinary investigation that's.
Correct.
Okay. Just to add to that, we often try in our beginning updates when our Inspector General's office does put out a report related to public safety, we like to try and make sure the public knows about it. So we also keep you apprised of what's happening.
I have one more question.
The ordinance is pending for the committee to call for a specified approach. Please. Yeah.
Respond a little bit to that. I think those are great points. And A lot of that is already happening, but can be done better. So for those of you who have been to CAPS meetings, you have civilian facilitators, so non-sworn officers, I mean, typically, community volunteers who are working with non-sworn employees. Or Morales, I think, does that work in the 19th district. And so I think, one, there's a recognition that that's important. In the budget that City Council just passed, there are several hundred additional civilian positions with at least the idea is, and we need to make sure that this happens in practice, that they're stepping in more to the shoes of officers' work. So specifically, I think about people who are doing work around mental health as well as domestic and gender-based violence, to be able to work in the community, talk with affected individuals, including victims and survivors, and then talk with groups, and then have that information funneled up not just to the districts themselves, but overall to leadership. In terms of the workforce allocation study, hear your point completely. It can't be done tomorrow, but as I think Jenny might have mentioned, this is something that has been discussed for well over 10 years. We've had false stops and starts. And so when we're talking about like this dashboard and all the great questions it poses, I think it's one of those things where after a point of a year or a year and a half from now will become now. And so we need to be able to 2 and 3 and 4 track it to say, to your point, there are things that we can and should be doing immediately, but then there are things that we need to be planning for so that hopefully 2 years from now, we're going to be in a much better place to synthesize information about staffing point in time, information about 911 calls, the types of calls, as well as what where our financial situation is, to hopefully be in a place where we're feeling better about public safety in terms of just like how we're feeling in our community, and then the stats back.
Okay, I think we're gonna wrap up this session. Thank you, everybody, for the questions. And I want to say thank you, Inspector General and Deputy Inspector General, for coming out to present. This was awesome. And it really highlights a lot of the things and priorities we're, aiming to accomplish here in the 19th specifically. So we really appreciate coming out tonight. Thank you so much. Okay, so we do have a couple of calls to action and reminders that we want to have for everybody. So just bear with me as I get to the proper spot. But I do want to take one more pause and just make sure. And anybody want to make a public comment? Well, I was very excited to show off my new 2-minute timer. But I guess we'll have to wait for January.
Still be snowing.
I just got to pay a little bit of tribute here. So great animation. I'll be back. Okay, so for our next meeting, we want to talk about our next meeting and then 2024 coming up as well. So our next meeting is going to be Wednesday, January 24th at 6:30 at the Chicagoland Community Church, which is at 836 West Aldine. It's about so right by Aldine and Clark. We also want to highlight what our schedule is tentatively scheduled for. So just one big note, if many of you have attended our meetings before, they're typically on Tuesdays. Next year, we're going to move towards Wednesdays, except for 2 meetings, one June 22nd and the other December 14th. Those are scheduled for Saturday. This will become official once Sam, Jenny, and I have a chance to vote on it. So it will become legal and will become formal when we do have our full schedule formalized. We will make sure everyone knows of it. And then finally, as I mentioned, we wanted to give a couple of reminders, and as I promised, a couple of surveys. And I'm going to hand it over to Jenny to lead us through that.
All right, so last couple of things. We've talked quite a bit about the need for a workforce allocation study. Our team has written a letter in support of the proposal of the North District. That's going to go to City Council. There's a QR code to sign your name. We also have letters so that you can read the whole thing at the back of the room. Please take a minute to read it and sign on, and also share it with other people throughout the city. Anyone I know can sign it. And then the last thing, I'm very excited about this. We've all been talking about feedback on goals for the coming year. I'm asking everyone right now to take a minute and take their phone out, please, and scan our QR code. We're going to just take a couple minutes before this meeting ends to ask everybody to take a look at the goals that we prioritize for the year. And we want to hear your input. We want to know what things you are looking to for us to do moving forward in public safety to make the 19th district a safer community for everyone.
And just a reminder, we will be posting this on our website, all of our meetings, all of our recordings, and all of the data that we collect will be posted. We did have a survey in November. We're still collecting data. It's only been 3 weeks, so giving it a full month before we post it online. And so look out for that on our website, 19thdistrictcouncil.com.
And just as one example of how we use some of that information, the letter that we've written calling for a workforce allocation study, before we put that letter together, we did put out a call in our last meeting and in our email to our community to let us know what questions you think a workforce allocation study should ask. Now, this is not representative, but we did use 3 of the suggestions from the 19th Police District in the letter to the City Council. We care very much about your feedback and making sure that we're reflecting what you want this council to look like. We've only been in existence for what, 9 months now? Not even 7. And so we're looking forward to a full year of programming with your help and support and ideas.
All right, we'll be quiet when you guys take a minute to fill that out. Thank you. No, different. Someone was asking for a Taylor Swift concert. Maybe you should be.
Any volunteers? We won't have anything to come back now. All right, we can take about 30 more seconds and then we'll wrap it up. I just want to give everybody enough time.
We'll send it out.
We'll send it out by email to you.
We'll get lots of opportunities. We're just capturing this one right now.
All right, folks, thank you so much for participating. As Jenny and Sam just mentioned, we will be sending this out through our website, through our email newsletter, just in case anybody's competitive. We did hear that the 18th Police District Council sent out a survey and they got 2,000 responses. So we have some work to do. So please share amongst your neighbors, friends, anybody within the 19th District and across the city as well, right? We were open to everyone's feedback. But with that, we want to just remind everybody, you can always get in contact with us through our email addresses. We're always happy to answer any questions one-on-one or even have meetings as we've been doing so much. And with that, we will call the meeting at 7:51. Thank you so much. Happy holidays, everybody. Also want to say thank you very much to our hosts of Pilgrim Lutheran Church for all the setup. Thank you so much for hosting us. Oh, and if you would like to help clean up, we need to move all chairs.